Republican presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis attended a meet-and-greet event in Iowa where instead of thunderous cheers, he was met with crickets. Writer for The Bulwark Tim Miller shared a photo of the event on X, showing a great number of empty seats. Trump political advisor Stephen Chung took a swipe at DeSantis' lackluster showing. Since being posted on Saturday, this picture has already been viewed nearly 1 million times.
Meanwhile, in a sit-down interview with NBC News, the Florida governor went against rival Donald Trump when asked whether he lost in 2020. Take a look.
Of course he lost.
Trump lost the 2020 election.
Of course.
Okay.
Joe Biden's the president. But the issue is, I think, what people in the media and elsewhere, they want to act like somehow this was just like the perfect election.
All right, he says, of course, but there is a new poll that shows that the percentage of Republicans who think Biden's 2020 win was illegitimate is up to 70%. 70% of Republicans disagree with what Ron DeSantis said there. They think that Biden stole the election and that Trump is the rightful president of the United States of America. How do you run a presidential campaign against someone who the majority of your party believes should be president already, even as they're being indicted for the crime of having tried to steal the election themselves?
I mean, they're wrong, and Joe Biden did win the presidential election. I mean, I could bring up, though, that, all of the people, including very top Democratic officials who complained that they thought the election was illegitimate when Trump won in 2016. I'm not imputing they didn't take the same actions based on that belief that Trump did, but from the standpoint of just believing that your guy actually won that it was unfair, it was rigged, it was not a good election, it was something that Hillary Clinton and Chris Hayes and so many people said after 2016.
Yeah, I do think that
Michael Tracy has a great roundup of it that I'm trying to pull up here, and maybe I'll get. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, Chris Hayes. Again, this is 2016. Fun fact: states decide how to apportion their electors. They could give them all to, say, whichever candidate won a majority of counties. Sounds like a criminal scheme, some people might say.
Well, if they have, as they have well documented with Donald Trump, evidence of him making calls to state election officials to try to get them to actually do that and to coordinate a slate of fake electors to be submitted to Congress and the Library of Congress and to
the
Congress
Atlantic,
itself.
The Electoral College was meant to stop men like Trump from being president.
And to pressure Mike Pence to open the fake slate of electors, declare that there's too much ambiguity, even knowing that they're fake.
I'm not done. DeRay McKesson said the Electoral College must stop him or Congress or some other body. This is scary. E.J.
That's
Dunn
free speech that you love, right?
Yeah, it is free speech.
That's free
it's all
speech,
free speech.
And everybody else saying that about Trump is free speech.
It's all free
but
speech.
Again,
I'm not putting anybody in prison.
I don't think it's very helpful to blur the line between saying, hey, I think I pay too much in taxes, and hey, accountant, break the law so that I don't pay the taxes that I'm owed. Those are both speech, but one of them is a conspiracy to break the law.
I find whatever ways necessary to make me pay.
Do you tell them to break the law?
No.
No, exactly. So, well, if you have all of your lawyers advising, I'm sorry, we could be having conversations.
I was comparing to just you brought up the percentage of voters who believe this. I was saying there's an equivalency of belief. I didn't say there's equivalency of action.
But believe what? But this is important. Democrats believe that Russia interference skewed the election. Right. That's the belief. And there are some other Democrats who wanted Democrats to steal the election, but that didn't actually happen.
And there are a lot of Republicans who think the censorship on social media of the Hunter Biden laptop story,
that's fair and might be true,
makes it not
that's
fair. It was still all's fair in love and war.
That's a legitimate belief that might be true. But the statistic here is believing that Donald Trump, that the election win was illegitimate. So it could be a mix of those things. That's completely fair enough. But given the background of Trump being indicted for the specific crime of rigging the election, of trying to rig the election in a scheme that might have been successful, but for the integrity of any number of Republicans across the 7 states that were targeted by this scheme, it puts Ron DeSantis in a really difficult position. How does Ron DeSantis attract some proportion of that 70% of voters without basically agreeing with Donald Trump that the election was stolen from him in 2020? It seems like an impossible task.
He doesn't.
Yeah. So if you look at what's going on poll-wise on the ground in Iowa, Trump's lead is a little bit less strong over on DeSantis. He has 44%. This is from a poll from a few days ago in the New York Times. is at 44% of Iowa GOP voters. DeSantis is at 20%. Tim Scott is actually in third place in Iowa with 9%. And Vivek Ramaswamy is at 5%. Then Haley at 4%, Pence at 3%, Burgum at 1%, and Chris Christie at less than 1%, despite all of his appearances on Pod Save America and MSNBC. He doesn't seem to be connecting with the Iowa conservative base. So, this does make it feel inevitable that Trump is the Republican nominee.
Seems like it.
And I will say that having seen crowds like that, in 2016 when Hillary was going around the country as compared to Bernie's barn burners that had tens of thousands of people at them, it makes a difference when you have a historically unpopular candidate, because at the end of the day, you have to rely on turnout. That's it. At the end of the day, you can have people think that Trump is worse than you, but at the end of the day, if they stay home instead of coming out to vote for you, you're still going to lose the election.
Right. That's ultimately what it's going to come down to in terms of Biden's vulnerabilities. I think it's not particularly likely that Trump picks up a whole bunch of new voters who weren't there for him either the last two times. It's harder for me to imagine the voter that said that, yeah, I didn't like Trump then, I didn't like him last time, but yeah, now I'm on board. That's harder for me to picture. What's not quite so hard to picture is the Biden voter, voted Biden last time, but doesn't feel like promises were followed through on, is bummed out, and just doesn't vote at all.
Yeah, and we're seeing that.
That is not so hard to imagine.
It's part of why there's so much panic about black voter turnout, about the role that Cornel West will play as a popular black figure who will very much still be in the race as a third-party candidate once the primaries are over.
Well, DeSantis continues to lag behind Trump by double digits. A new report in Bloomberg highlights how, despite his promise of a reset, his campaign team has been left wanting, with worries setting in that the race appears to be slipping away.
In a statement, DeSantis' campaign director, Andrew Romeo, responded to a request for comment, writing, quote, "The campaign in this race that is struggling is the one that spent over $60 million on false attacks against Ron DeSantis and paying lawyers and not a cent trying to beat Joe Biden. By contrast, Ron DeSantis had a historic fundraising haul last quarter in which he outraised a current and former president, and our campaign remains laser focused on taking his message to reverse the decline of this country and revive America's future to as many voters as possible." Well, that's not a bad statement. What, in your view, rings most clearly as the Ron DeSantis policy that's geared toward uplifting the interest of average Americans? I'm struggling.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes, I'm struggling to come up with the messaging that he's been doing that's focused on material uplift.
Damaging Disney. Yeah, this is his problem. He's not, speaking. He could talk about how while he was governor of Florida, he was early on reopening the state and having vaccine distribution happen for those who want it, but he was not going to keep people from their jobs, from flourishing in their communities, in their schools, and that's why people are coming in droves to Florida. Even during the pandemic, people sought Florida out. That would be a great message to talk about.
Is that a message that still hits once the pandemic is declared over by Joe Biden and all the Republicans, even before Joe Biden?
I mean, I think he should still be running on that. Yeah, I think that's the affirmative case for DeSantis' presidency.
So he should be president because there might be another pandemic again, and we'll know that he'll behave right, in the correct way.
That he handled it better than Trump is the case. Again, I'm not a surrogate for his campaign,
sure,
but that is something you can clearly pick up on. That's for winning the nomination. Those sentiments do exist to the Republican Party, even among people who really like Trump. The only boo lines you can get at a Trump rally are if Trump says something about COVID that doesn't fit the base.
No, I get it.
And you can say those things without totally alienating, unlike maybe some of the woke mind virus talk, without totally alienating moderate and swing voters and independents. In fact, a lot of them do probably like that about DeSantis.
No, I'm just pointing out that I think that argument would be a lot more salient if there was an acknowledgement that COVID is an ongoing situation that DeSantis would handle better than Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I do think there's a little bit of a self-defeating, that was a real opportunity, I agree with you, for people like Ron DeSantis, and it galvanized a lot of Americans. It played a role in the Virginia governor's race that freaked out so many Democrats and all of those things. But if if you have a bipartisan commitment of COVID being over, I just don't know how much more traction it's going to have in the ongoing race. I really genuinely do believe that Joe Biden won in part because he was perceived to be the guy who's going to handle COVID better. And so it cuts both ways. Maybe it's better for Trump now. I think he has a lot better chances against Joe Biden this time around because COVID is behind him. But what does that mean for someone like Ron DeSantis, whose national prominence really was very closely correlated to how he handled the pandemic?
Look, if I were Ron DeSantis, I would be trying to make certainly the primary and maybe to some extent the general be a referendum on COVID. That's what I would do. 100% all in on that. So we will continue to see how his campaign fared. Look, it's not totally over. Doesn't look great. Not totally over. There will be more developments to come. Could pull off a McCain 2008 come from behind victory after New Hampshire. We will see. More Rising right after this.